Hi, everyone. This is Andy Hashimoto with Insight Financial Services, and I'm very excited to have with me today Drew Hines, the IT director from the Corvallis School District. Drew, just wanted to ask a couple of questions. And first of all, maybe can you just describe your current device situation in terms of number of models, the quantity, the age of that equipment, and what challenges or opportunities have these devices created within the IT department and within your classrooms?
There's all kinds of challenges. The last couple of years, each of us have overcome a lot of challenges, and there's a lot of opportunities moving forward. Corvallis is a school district of about 7,000 students, kindergarten through 12. We're K-5 iPad, and this year we've moved to 6 through 12 Chromebook. Previously, we had middle school iPads. So we're K-5 iPads and 6 through 12 Chromebooks. And our teachers use Windows devices. Classified staff had a variety of different roles this last season, and we have a lot of them on Chromebooks and Windows machines, as well as a few iPads. When we started moving forward with a device replacement process, we had the emergency connectivity funding, the benefit of some federal funding to help us. And it allowed us to kind of look at stabilizing our purchases and our device lifecycle. And we were looking for a partner where we could work with, where we could look at a leasing option or option that stabilizes a common amount that we have each year for our budget. And in the end of the life cycle, end of life devices, that a place for those to go home somewhere else that's not here. And so we looked at those partnerships, and Andy and his team and Insights has been super helpful in this process, both from leveraging technology funding and also as well as looking at options as a partner. It's been a good partnership. Corvallis is a neat community in the Valley in Oregon, with the backstop of Oregon State University. A lot of very educated families that have a high degree of expectation for us, not just in device and hardware and management and network infrastructure, but also in the software and the curriculum and the decisions we make with instructional time.
Yeah, perfect, Drew. So you spoke just now about lifecycle management and kind of managing the expectations now that the families have and the students have. What are some of the steps that you are taking to prepare for the eventual refresh when this equipment comes to the end of its life cycle? How are you preparing for the refresh for those students and for your teachers?
Well, our IT department is focused on outstanding customer service with smaller principles, promises or commitments, I guess you could call them, around reliable network connectivity, dependable devices, interactive displays, secure systems, and useful data. And within that delivery, if we can deliver on those things, including in that is the dependable devices. And so we need to have an update device cycle where we're managing the life cycle from the purchase all the way to the recycle or the reuse. And so we're looking at a K-5, a 5-year iPad replacement. You could probably argue with others around a 4-year or a 6-year, either way, but we went with 5. It matched our grade levels. It marries in terms of iPads. You usually can get about 4 or 5 years out with the apps stop working. So it's a good opportunity for 5 years out of iPads and Apple Pencils. And then 6 through 12, or I guess 6 through 8, we're looking at a 3-year life cycle. Those students are harder on devices, and even with the good shopping we did with devices that have Gorilla Glass and a plastic case, it's still, there's going to be more damage and hurt done with those devices. So we're planning on a 3-year life cycle with middle school, and then a 4-year life cycle for high school, so that potentially we could pass out devices to the beginning of the grades and not touch them, let students keep them through the summers, so that in 8th grade we make a transition, and in senior year we get those devices back and cycle them back through. Thinking about also using some older devices, buying back either through our partnership or at the end of these cycles, where we can use a few spares in the classroom. Super important for teachers to be able to say, there's no excuses around here. The dog didn't eat my homework. The dog didn't eat my Chromebook. the teachers are relying the first day of school on their syllabus and their guidelines and expectations in their classroom. They need these devices before school starts, or at least within the first 2 days. So being able to work with a partner where we could either keep or lease or keep or buy back and have spares on hand here and there really helps. And so that gives you kind of an idea of where we're at.
Perfect. So you have some pretty specific timelines and expected life cycles ranging from 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years. How has implementing a lease around those timelines, how has that prepared you to have a successful refresh at the end of that period of time?
I'm not going to answer that question directly. I'm going to start with, funding with education after 20 years of doing this in IT and tech. Every year is kind of a mixed bag as to how much money you're going to have. And emergency connectivity funding gave us a gift because we had this opportunity to put things into place that maybe we wouldn't have been able to do. So Apple Pencils and pens and Chromebooks that have touch screens, those are things we probably wouldn't have been able to afford absent from emergency connectivity funding. To really more directly answer the question in terms of how we manage the refresh, the lease arrangements we have for 3 years at the middle, 4 years at the high, and 5 years at the K-5 allow us to stagger our work as an IT department as well as our funding. So it's pretty common in a district where you come in and there's lease arrangements where you get a bill halfway through the year about where did that come from? And there went, $20,000 out of my budget or $40,000 out of my budget I didn't even expect. It's nice to have a predictable schedule where everybody kind of knows and starts to look forward to new devices. And these middle schoolers are looking forward to those new devices, even though they've had iPads for a while, they're starting to get a little old. And with Chromebooks, they have a full keyboard and they swivel around to being a device, and they come with a pen. Now, managing the pen and the logistics, I don't know very many districts that are trying to do that yet. So we're going to start small and scale with some pilot classes, math and language arts in particular, where teachers are looking and really innovating, and then we'll slowly distribute those. And I don't mind them sitting on the shelf for a little while because I don't want to pass them out all the start of the school year. There's enough doing with touchscreens. So having a lease arrangement and a plan, we're big on the 7 habits, be proactive, start with the end in mind. And if we're doing something on purpose, we've got this 3 and a 4 and a 5 year trajectory. People, not just in the teaching and learning curriculum department, but also within our own office, kind of predictably plan their day and their week and their year around the work they're going to need to do to roll things out.
Yeah, and that actually segues perfectly into my last question, which is, and you mentioned starting with the end in mind, which is really what we focus on from a leasing perspective. Now that you're implementing this long-term strategy, a predictable strategy, are there any, gains that you have seen that you didn't foresee, or what other positive impacts have come out of just having that long-term strategy, that predictability?
Yeah. Again, I'm going to answer a little bit of an odd way, but my parents are aging, and as you get into your 40s or so, you're raising your kids and you're lowering your parents. And the raising of the kids, the conversations about digital privacy and data privacy and credit and your digital footprint and being a digital citizen, those are really important to stay in their world enough so you know some of the risks that they're encountering every day. We've had space and time to think about the filtering and some of the artificial intelligence that we're putting in place to capture and refer kids if they're searching for things on their computer like self-harm or violent weapons, things that might be concerning. And I think it gives us space and time to think. And if we have a predictable schedule, teachers are big on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you kind of have this base of things that are like food, water, and shelter. And then you're able to do these other things. Educators really talk a lot that way, where we want to provide breakfast and lunch for kids, and then we can get to the learning time. Well, when you provide reliable technology, that is reliable connectivity, dependable devices, interactive display, useful data, and secure systems, you provide kind of a hierarchy of a base of support. And if you add on for the people who work within the budget cycles, if you provide some reliable funding, it gets a predictable schedule of, like, you know that each year a certain portion of your funding is going to the total cost of ownership of devices, and another portion of the funding is going towards training and the work that it's going to take to implement things well. And the other third, with total cost of ownership, is really around the networking and infrastructure side that nobody ever really thinks about until you walk into a a school district that doesn't have backup power or a network infrastructure or switches or wireless access points that are not doing a good job of being managed. And it allows us, if we got devices taken care of, it allows us to have conversations about cybersecurity and multi-factor authentication, some of those things that we really need to talk about, data privacy. And then just to kind of complete that cycle, you got the parents on the other side. You're contributing to the community. And I think the opportunity with technology is you're giving devices, network connectivity. The future isn't going to be necessarily just in the schools. The future is learning that's ubiquitous, that allows kids to take those devices into the city and be able to sit at the library or the local cafe and be able to have connectivity that's filtered and that's available anywhere. And several reps have talked to me in the past about, you got to have a wireless plan. I didn't even understand what they were talking about until the pandemic, and what everybody's like, well, where are the hotspots? Where are the cellular? Where are the SIM cards? You got to buy devices with SIM cards now. I think probably the percentage of device loss each year, which we're going to have loss and breakage, and there's several ways to handle that. That might be a whole nother interview, Andy. But in terms of insurance, or self-insured, you work with a third party, something like that. But if you're thinking about how you are going to support those devices and in the community and get the students into the workforce experience and support the community, I think that's what it's allowed us to do.
Yeah, I like the way that you phrase that, actually, Drew, with these devices, whether it's for the kids, the teachers, the staff, it's kind of a baseline, right? And that's becoming an expectation. And the only time that you're going to have an issue is if it's not working. Right? People just expect these things to be there, to work well. Just like when you walk into the classroom, you flip the switch and the lights turn on. Right? It's become that way. So you steady that, and now you're able to start thinking about all of these other things: teaching, safety, learning. Right? All of those parts. So, Drew, it was awesome. I do really appreciate your time and your insight. I actually have a couple of notes of my own that I'm going to take away from this brief interview. But thanks again. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for your partnership, Andy.
Yeah, thank you, Drew.
Take care.